Brad Pitt and George Clooney's friendship has long been seen as a nearly perfect example of friendship in the glitzy world of Hollywood. It was Brad who heard George say that he was going to stay single for the rest of his life because his past relationships had hurt him too much. But when George met Amal, things changed in a way he didn't expect. The world was shocked when this turning point happened, like a fairy tale coming true out of nowhere.
Hollywood.
Although she smiles brightly and everything seems to be going well, Brad knows that there are still deep cracks that the spotlight can't hide. He finally got the courage to talk about the dirty parts of Clooney and Amal's marriage today. Brad said in a soft voice, "People only see the spotlight." But George Clooney has been through awful things that no one could ever imagine. Besides that, he said that there was a mysterious third person involved in this relationship. A fact that would shake all of Hollywood if it came out. How will the public see George Clooney after they find out this secret? And what is the real story behind that marriage that seems to be going so well? Let's find out the whole truth in this video. The journey starts with how close these two legendary guys are as friends. In a Hollywood that is full of lights but not truthfulness, no one would have thought that two people with very different personalities could meet by chance, like two pieces that fit together perfectly. George Clooney and Brad Pitt met on the set of Ocean's 11. It seemed like a normal meeting, but it was the start of a friendship that would become famous all over Hollywood. To make Pitt laugh on the first day, Clooney said something that was kind of a joke. "I hear you're the hottest guy," he answered with a smile and a shrug. "Let's see who gets booed more by the end of the day." That seemingly unimportant conversation was the start of a journey that would last for more than 20 years. At that very moment, they felt a special bond that started like a spark and spread like fire. Everybody on the crew laughed out loud just by standing next to each other. Everyone was always interested in seeing how far the Pitt and Clooney show would go when they pulled pranks. To tease George, Brad once put up fake sexiest man alive posters of him all over Rome. George sent Brad a funeral wreath with the message, "My condolences on the loss of Brad Pitt's looks." At Cannes in 2007, they danced like they were 16 years old. "You're the worst actor I've ever met, but I still don't want to act with anyone else," George once yelled behind the scenes of Burn After Reading. There was something real and impossible to fake behind those jokes, but behind the laughter was a much stronger emotional current. It was so strong that the media called them Hollywood's longest-lasting friends. They didn't just share the attention. They stood together at times when most people would have avoided it. In 2016, when Brad was going through the chaos of his divorce, George was the only one who broke into Brad's house without telling him first. When George turned 56 and had to deal with the stress of becoming a dad, Pitt sent him a XXL adult diaper with a funny note. "Old man, get ready. Now it's your turn to cry." These are the quiet moves that can't be faked. Pitt once said that he calls George when things go wrong because George can see the whole board and not just the pieces that are in front of him. Clooney, who always hides his pain with humor, got help from Pitt, who is one of the few people who really gets how tired he is behind his happy exterior. Even though these two guys don't seem weak, they both have many cracks inside, which they have healed together over the years. People are amazed, not by how close they are, but by how they have kept their friendship going for almost 25 years in a place where betrayal happens so quickly. They call each other every week, even though their jobs and schedules take them in different places around the world. They do this because they trust each other so much. Because they've been through so many hard times, scandals, failed marriages, and falls together that no one else has seen. Brad Pitt is now an important part of George Clooney's life that can't be replaced. Behind George's movie star smile, he knows every fear, every wound, and every secret that he has kept hidden. Right now, Brad Pitt is ready to show what's left. Each layer of glitz will be taken off one by one. Hollywood used to be crazy about this love story, but now it will be turned on its head, revealing the cold truth about a marriage that seemed unbreakable at first. To understand that fall, we need to start from the very beginning. Clooney once swore he would never get married again. But there were some beautiful times when he stood next to the woman who made everyone think he had changed. When they were seen together in Venice, the soft looks they gave each other, and the pictures that made people believe in fate all seemed like a dream. But maybe that dream was the most fragile thing of all. People thought George Clooney was one of the sexiest single men in Hollywood before he met Amal. A man that many people looked up to, but who didn't believe in marriage or family until he met the woman who would make his whole life different. George had said before that he would never get married and that he wanted to live a free life without any responsibilities. I remember him telling me, "I don't need anyone. I'm fine on my own," Brad said in a low voice, as if he were remembering a wonderful and lonely time in his friend's life. That wasn't a mistake. George had been in a lot of relationships, including well-known ones with Jennifer Seibel Nwomi and Elizabeth Canales. In the late 1980s, he was married to actress Talia Balsam, but they split up a few years later in 1993. George told his friends after that marriage, "I've never met anyone who made me want to give up my freedom." During that time, George made a promise to himself. No marriage, no kids, and no tying down his heart. For him, being single wasn't just a choice. It was a statement of how he wanted to run his life, completely freely and on his own terms. He even joked that his longest relationships were just gifts or short memories, never turning into anything serious. Then Amal showed up. For Brad, that was like a sudden spark lighting up in the dark. George, who had sworn he would stay single, changed all of a sudden. His eyes, his body language, and his smile were all different. I had never seen him like that before. Brad let out a soft sigh. He had really changed. Brad knew that this wasn't just a one-night stand. It was the first time George had truly fallen in love with someone with all his heart, which he had kept hidden for so many years. Brad still remembers the summer night in 2013 when George came back from Lake Co with a look that Brad hadn't seen in a long time. Confused, happy, and scared. "I think I've met someone," George said. Brad laughed and asked, "You mean a woman you didn't immediately run away from?" At that very moment, Brad realized that everything had changed. He said that before Amal, no one had ever really stopped George because no one was strong enough to step into his world without being consumed by fame. But Amal, a human rights lawyer who dedicated her life to justice, left George stunned in a completely different way. She didn't care about Hollywood, didn't pay attention to flashing cameras, and hadn't even seen his movies. And that was exactly what drew George in. From then on, he started writing long emails, pages at a time, just to find reasons to talk to her. Unlike a 15-year-old boy, George told Brad, she was both shy and happy. He knew his friend had really felt love at first sight, so Brad just gave her a quiet smile. When they started dating seriously in London, George called Brad first thing in the morning. "I think I'm done for Clooney's side over the phone," Brad said. "What did you do? Say something wrong? Ruin the date?" George asked, his voice full of confusion. George, who was known for living a free and carefree life, almost broke down in tears when he said, "No, I like her too much." Pitt knew everything about George's fear, the fear of not being good enough. In April 2014, George asked Amal to marry him. Brad was the happiest person when he heard the news. He was scared of getting old and scared that this love was stronger than anything he had ever known how to hold on to. Another time, he saw a totally different side of his friend. It was awkward and sincere at the same time, and it was very moving. George said he had been on one knee for almost 30 minutes because Amal was so shocked that she couldn't answer right away. Brad joked that staying on one knee for that long without cramping would be a miracle. George laughed and said, "I only knew one thing." Brad saw George put his whole heart in a woman's hands for the first time that day. Their wedding in Venice in 2014 almost made everyone in Hollywood speechless. Brad was most moved by George's emotional stand in front of Amal, his eyes red with emotion like a man who had finally found a place he never thought he deserved. Not the long list of famous guests or the extravagant extravagance. While standing behind him, Pitt could hear his friend whisper, "I've been waiting a long time for you." And even though George Clooney had played many roles, Brad would never forget that face of a man in love. After they got married, George Clooney told the press, "We've never fought. Why fight when no one wins?" Their relationship grew slowly but deeply. They didn't stay married through fights, but through understanding and patience, though silence between them wasn't empty. It held a world of love and respect. Then, in 2017, Brad got the call at midnight, telling George that Amal was pregnant with twins. George was scared, and his voice was full of confusion. When they started dating seriously in London, George called Brad first thing in the morning. "I think I'm done for Clooney's side over the phone," Brad said. "What did you do? Say something wrong? Ruin the date?" George asked, his voice full of confusion. George, who was known for living a free and carefree life, almost broke down in tears when he said, "No, I like her too much." Pitt knew everything about George's fear, the fear of not being good enough. In April 2014, George asked Amal to marry him. Brad was the happiest person when he heard the news. He was scared of getting old, and scared that this love was stronger than anything he had ever known how to hold on to. Another time, he saw a totally different side of his friend. It was awkward and sincere at the same time, and it was very moving. George said he had been on one knee for almost 30 minutes because Amal was so shocked that she couldn't answer right away. Brad joked that staying on one knee for that long without cramping would be a miracle. George laughed and said, "I only knew one thing." Brad saw George put his whole heart in a woman's hands for the first time that day. Their wedding in Venice in 2014 almost made everyone in Hollywood speechless. Brad was most moved by George's emotional stand in front of Amal, his eyes red with emotion like a man who had finally found a place he never thought he deserved. Not the long list of famous guests, or the extravagant extravagance. While standing behind him, Pitt could hear his friend whisper, "I've been waiting a long time for you." And even though George Clooney had played many roles, Brad would never forget that face of a man in love. After "I got married," George Clooney told the press, "We've never fought. Why fight when no one wins?"